Hi there, and welcome to this video where we're going to be exploring designing a nice looking landing page with Figma. We're going to be doing both the desktop view and the mobile view for it, and just exploring both how Figma works, how I'm placing everything in there, as well as looking at my design process a little bit, how I'm making decisions, why I'm aligning things where I am, how I'm choosing my hierarchy, how I'm choosing my colors. Hi there, my name is Kevin, and welcome to my channel where we learn how to make the web and how to make it look good with weekly tips, tricks, and tutorials. Now, I know you're excited to get into Figma and explore a little bit there, but before we get to that, I just want to let you know that this video is being brought to you by the Freelancing Bundle. If you're someone who's looking into freelancing either as a complete career change, or maybe you want to do it as a bit of a side hustle during these times, we're always looking maybe for a little bit of extra income. The Freelancing Bundle over at studywebdevelopment.com might be exactly what you are looking for. It goes over the fundamentals of freelancing and positioning yourself, how to price your services, which is always really hard, as well as an invoicing template, proposal templates, and a prospective client questionnaire, which is always a really good thing to have. You're getting access to private Slack and Facebook communities where you can talk with other people on how they're growing their businesses and how things are going for them, share ideas, and grow together. So if this sounds good to you, you can use the link down below in the description. Kyle from the Freelancing Bundle has been nice enough to give my audience here a coupon, so you can use KEV25 at checkout for a 25% discount. So if that sounds good to you and you want to check it out, again, the link is in the description of the video. Now let's go and check out Figma. All right, so here we go. I am in Figma. I've made a new file. We need to have a artboard, or what do they call it here? A frame. So I'm just pushing A on my keyboard to bring up my frame tool, and then I get all the different sizes here automatically. So I'm just going to go to desktop, and I'm going to choose the iMac one for now because it's a good start. I tend to make this a little bit taller often, but you can go with whatever you want, and I will call this one right here. Let's just call it desktop. So for the design of this one, I'm just going to come in here and we're going to write deliciously. I'm pushing Shift Enter for a soft break. Mouth watering burgers. And then I'm going to push K on my keyboard to bring up my scale tool, so that lets me move it. Now, one problem with the scale tool in Figma is if I push V, I have my select tool. If I push K, I have my scale tool. They look identical, so there's no way to tell the difference between them, sadly. Now, I have picked out a font already, so I'm going to come into here and choose EXO2. Because it's kind of an interesting font, and I find at this size, or the regular, it's interesting. It has some character to it. It looks a little bit interesting. But I found this by looking around on Google Fonts at the really heavy ones, and I find that sort of suits the style that I want to go with. Especially if I come over to here and I make this guy all caps, so I can do that with this toggle right there. And one thing you'll want to do is anytime you make all cap text, especially if it's a large font size, is come onto your line height, which is set to auto here, and just shrink that down to bring it all a little bit closer together. So that's the title that I'm going to want to have. That's like my main message. It's deliciously mouth-watering burgers, which is an absolutely outrageous little comment there. And what I'm going to do is bring in an image that I already have. So to do that, I'm going to come to my frame. No, this one here. I'm going to come to that tool, and it's place image, Control-Shift-K. Figma has this thing with the K key for their shortcuts. Personally, it drives me nuts. I'm wondering, in retrospect, I always complained about it a little bit, but I'm wondering if it's because it's a browser tool, so you can use Figma in the browser without any issue. And it could be that they already had a lot of other shortcuts were mapped to other keys that are left-hand keys. So they went with K. That's the only thing I can think of, but it does drive me a little nuts. So I did get this image in from Unsplash, and I took the background out using Photoshop. So I have a nice little PNG here with no background. I probably could have cleaned it up a little bit better, but there we go. We have my image. Now, if you'd like to know how I removed the background from the image and you'd like to see a tutorial on something like that, just let me know, and I can do a future video where we take a look at that. And more or less, what I want to do for this hero area type thing is have a title, have my burger, and I will add a little bit more text. So I'm going to push T for my text tool, but I'm going to make a box, something like that. And let's change my font size right away so we don't end up with something too big. I'm going to go with 21. And my line height will adjust that. And I do have a plugin here, so I'm going to right click and go to Lorem Ipsum. Let's just go to Manage Plugins for a second. And it's just, here we go. You can see it's called Lorem Ipsum It's the only plugin I have right now. So if you have recommendations for other ones, I'd love to hear what they are. But right there, lorem ipsum. And what that means is, whoops, I don't want to go there. I want to go back to here. If I right click, I can choose lorem ipsum. I can say how many words I want, and I can just click generate, or I can just put auto generate, and it will perfectly fill my box. And there we go. It comes in. Now I don't want the bold one, obviously. Let's go with regular or maybe light. Figma always remembers the last settings you used. So I had all caps. So I'm going to have to come through here and turn that off now. And now I'm going to want to increase the line height quite a bit. This is like a 150% here would be the same as if you're writing CSS, it'd be like a line height 1.5. I tend to find 140 to 160 works best. Depends on the font size, all of that. But for body text, around there, for titles and for large fonts and other ones, you can definitely come in and really tighten them up. So we can bring that in like that, and I'm just going to shrink that box a little. And the last thing I want is to add a button down here. We're also going to add a navigation. Now you can see right now my layout doesn't have too much coming into it, but let's just add that last little bit of content, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more. About it. So say we do book a table like that. And what I'm going to do is double click here. So it just shrinks that to fit my text. And then I'm going to push Shift A for the auto layout tool, because that automatically, instead of drawing the rectangle and then having to go and make it, if you push Shift A, it makes an auto layout. So the advantage with that is now I should be able to add a fill. And for now, let's just add a dark color, and we'll come through and customize the colors a little bit in a second. And then my text here can become white. And I think what I'll do, once I do auto layout, I get some positioning controls here, so I can sort of have some fun with this. And I think for my titles, or for my buttons, not my titles, but for my buttons, I do think that it makes sense to come in and make them all cap. And I think I'm going to come in with a little bit more of a smaller size, maybe like an 18, but come in with a heavier weight. And maybe just increase the letter spacing, which is this guy, just a touch. I don't know why I said touch. So that looks a little bit better. And the last thing I'm going to do is just round these corners off. We have like round corners in my font. We have a burger. There's the melting cheese on it. There's lots of roundness going on. So I do think it makes sense to come in and just make this a pill shape. I think that works. But I'm just going to increase my padding a little bit on the top and bottom. Something like that, I think. Something like that, I think, is looking not too bad. And we can have a book a table there. So now one thing you want to make sure whenever you're doing a layout is that you're thinking about the hierarchy of that layout. I've already made a bit of a hierarchy here coming in with these different sizes, right? So I have this really big title, this text, and then this stands out a little bit too. But I also have my image that's here, and I find they're kind of fighting each other a little bit. They're not, there's two things. This has color in it. It's sort of grabbing my eye. My eye goes back to here. My eye goes back to there. The two choices you have here are like having a smaller image maybe, that's sitting off on the side, and you can do something like that and maybe add a color. I'm just going to push I for the eyedropper, and it's hard to see that. We could grab something I don't like either of those colors, but I like the yellow, but yellow on white can be really hard to play with. But something like that could work. Or the other option, which I think I'm going to go for in this one, is to have like a really oversized image. And actually what I'm doing now is I have the scale tool, but the scale tool will grow from the corner. I'm holding Alt on my keyboard. If you're on a Mac, it'd be Option, and then it scales it from the center. So you can go really oversized on something. So maybe something coming in, a little bit something like that could be interesting. So this really oversized one, this becomes like a decorative element almost. And I find when you have these oversized elements, the focus actually goes more on the text, which is kind of good. And for this, I'm going to push R for a rectangle. And I'm just going to come up to here and draw in a rectangle. I want to put a navigation. I do think, so here, actually, we should name stuff. So navigation. And I'm going to bring it down underneath. I think it'd be kind of fun if we have a bit of an overlap there. And we should have a logo. So we can grab this guy. And I think we'll just say the burger shop. I'm going to shrink that down and push K for my scale tool and really just shrink her down because it does not need to be too big. Maybe then we could shrink, whoops, not undo, push V for move tool, and then I can do something like that. This one, I'm going to make it a bit darker. I think we're going to stick with like a gray on that one. The advantage with doing that, and maybe it could even be out, we could do a gray, or we could come in this burger and grab like a dark brown if we really want to go with the burger colors a bit more. And then I could come here, I'm going to eyedrop again and choose from the yellows in here. And I think that stands out nicely. It's a bit of a retro feel, actually, that brown and yellow, but I kind of like that. I'm digging that a little bit. And what I'm going to do, and I did this before when I brought this over, actually, is I'm going to take this and push Alt on my keyboard and drag so it copies it. So I did the same thing before. I dragged that and I just copied it over. So it was just an Alt drag to make a copy of it. And these guys, we can come in and make that white. I think what I'll do is make it all caps. And once again, bring this up to the medium. Was that what I used? No, I used more than that. It must be the bold. I want the same one that I used on my button. And we can do home. I'm going to double click to shrink that down, center it in that space. You can see the smart guides are coming up. And if you didn't want to use the smart guides, I could select all this and I could just click that right there and center it in that space. And then I'm going to Alt drag. So we have a home. These are kind of big. I might change the font size. About, contact, and I think it makes sense to have like an order button or something. So we can do an order now. And when I was alt dragging those to copy them, I wasn't really paying attention how spaced out they are. And even if we could have them all over the place just for fun. And you just select all of those. And again, we can center it that way. And then I'm going to shift click to deselect my brown background here. And I'm going to go over to this and I'm going to tidy it up. So it just distributes them nice and equally. But I do find this is a little bit big for navigation. So let's go with like a 16. Select that guy again. And I will center it. Now I keep accidentally selecting my burger here. So I'm just going to come on this burger and lock it like that. This layer, I'm going to change it to logo. Title. Navigation's there. And what we should do is all of these can come with my navigation. And then my logo, I can grab all of that, push Command G or Control G on Windows, Control G. It makes a group, and I can call that main navigation. Now, when you have a group like that, if I come in and I move it, it's going to move the whole thing together. And my alignment here is driving me a little bit nuts. So I think what I'd rather do is actually grab all of these. So to get in the group, I'm just double clicking. And as soon as I double click, I can access the things in the group individually. And I'm going to line that up with here. Now my spacings, maybe what I actually should have done, let's undo that. Maybe I should just move all of this way a little bit because I don't want it to crowd my logo too much. Now it's crowding on this side a little bit, but I don't really like how this is looking. But this is sort of like the main idea of what I want. I'll worry about the alignment in a second, but I've got all the content that I want, something like this. And now this is where I find design gets a bit more fun. This is where you can start playing around with it a little bit. So one thing I really like looking at is the main hierarchy and then like a micro hierarchy within that. So here I have like of this text, there's a clear hierarchy. I think we have the big text, we have the paragraph, and we have this button. Each one's doing its own thing. Our eyes probably going from here and then to here. And if somebody's really interested, they might read this text. But within this and within titles, you can often make a bit more interesting of a hierarchy. So if I look at this, I think burgers is probably the most important word. I mean, we know we're on a burger website, obviously, but I'm going to grab burgers here and I'm going to make that a lot bigger, maybe even a bit more than that, 120. I want it like really in your face. And I'm going to decrease the line height on that just to bring it in a bit closer. And then we can come on this and instead of black, maybe I'll go with the regular. I'm choosing regular because I have a regular here. I don't want to add too many font weights just because I know because this is eventually going to become a website. I will code this up eventually. I don't want like 18 different font weights that have to be loaded in. So normally if I was designing this, I'd probably go with a light on that. Here I might have a semi-bold and all of that. But because I know it's going on the web, I don't think this is a variable font. I won't have those options. So we'll stick with the regular on this right here. And right away, I think that that makes this more interesting to look at. Burgers is like a punch in the face almost. It links with the big image we have here. And then we can create more hierarchy always through color. So actually, I think this text, I can make this brown color. And because I like that color, what I'm going to do is click on the style guy here, and I'm going to create a new color. So I'm going to hit the plus, and we'll call this dark brown. And I'll just make sure that this here is set using the same dark brown. So the advantage of having that color there is if I come in and I decide to edit it, you see it's changing here, but it's also changing this text down here. So if ever I do need to change it, it's nice and easy. So what I think, actually, I should come in and grab the yellow I have here. So I go there, click the plus, and call this accent color, create style. And now say I wanted my button to be that color, I could grab the background here and just switch it over. So that's one idea. I'm not going to do that yet. Again, that yellow on the white is kind of hard to see. So one option, actually, maybe let's try an eyedrop. We'll select this color here. I'm going to eyedrop in these darker oranges, maybe something like that, and I'll save it. I'm not sure if I really like it. We'll just call it orange. I knew it would accent for yellow, so like maybe I probably should have a primary, secondary, and all of that. I'm not being consistent with my naming here, but let's ignore that for a second. So that I don't mind, and I think the contrast there is high enough. So even we could do like a book a table, or what else? Maybe there's book a table and then there's takeout. And this is what I like about auto layout. You know, as I change my takeout, as I change my text, it updates automatically. And maybe takeout's less important. They want people to book a table. They make more money that way. But if somebody wants takeout, you want to make it easy. So we'll add a stroke that will use my color right here. Use that color. And my fill will be nothing. So I guess we could make a white actually. So I'm going to break this and then come in and make my fill white. Oh no, that's not going to work. Why did I do that? I didn't make a component here, so they shouldn't be matching. Oh, I didn't break it. That's why I edited the color. So what I'm going to do is break this so it's not connected to that orange anymore. And then I can, whoops, that's on my stroke. So my stroke is set to orange. What I want to do is get my fill. So this one I think is my fill. So I'm going to break that fill. There we go, fill. So it's not connected to that swatch anymore that I had. And we can go and make that white. And I think now my stroke needs to be a little bit bigger. 4, 3, we'll try 3. And the text inside of it obviously now will become, let's go take my orange. So we do something like that. And I think I'll actually make my stroke a 4. Just based on the sort of the thickness of the characters that I have there. I think that works. Thinking of it, maybe with Corona these days, takeout would be more important. But there we go. We have sort of a primary and secondary button. And we could name those, and I could probably be a good idea to make those into components. If you don't know much about Figma components, I do have another video that dives really deep into them. We explore them, components and auto layout, and sort of the amazing things that you can do with them. Really, there's some really awesome things that you can do. But I don't want to make that the focus of this video. We're just making a nice layout. We won't be building this out into too much more. So I'm just curious. Let's say I go in this text here and I choose my yellow. Yeah, it is hard to read. And then this one could become my brown, because I don't think it would look good if it was that one. I mean, it's not terrible, but if I do that, it's very readable. But the burgers is too light on the white background, so I can see this more. But there's a conflict there. Because I can read deliciously mouth-watering easier because of the higher contrast, it's putting more emphasis on that. But the burgers is a bigger font size and a bigger font weight. So they're sort of fighting each other right now, right? My eye it's not as clear to my eye as when it was all just the same color. My eye sort of doesn't know which one should be the focus. So I think what I'll do is keep this one with my dark brown color, which almost looks black. I think I can edit that and actually lighten it up just a little bit. Not too much. I want to keep it dark enough that my contrast here is okay. I think that'd be okay. And then I also think actually my yellow, I'm going to edit my yellow color and make it a little bit darker. Now I am paying attention to the contrast of this yellow on here as well, but I'm mostly looking at it here. And one thing, the problem with dark yellows is they get to this ugly color. So if ever you're having trouble with yellow on white, or you need to darken it up a little bit, bring it a little bit more, like don't make it orange, because then it's just orange, which I don't think looks terrible in this layout. But if you want to keep it, like don't keep it pure yellow, just go a little bit more towards the reds, but not too far. And it sort of keeps that, maybe I went a little too much. Like you can keep that yellow feeling without it being orange. You sort of got to balance it. It's on the orange side a little bit now, but it's at the point where I think it's attracting attention and not fading into the background like it originally was. So I think something like that. I'm not a big fan of this color actually, so I'm going to change this orange as well. Maybe it could be a little brighter and more. I don't want it to be red. If you go darker, dark orange just becomes brown. The problem I have now is like I have a brown, a yellow, and an orange, which they're colors that all go together. But you don't want to run in. The less colors you have, the easier it is, basically. So maybe even if it's more of like less saturated. So instead of sticking with like really there, like I'm not going into the grays, even though that's not terrible, but I want to keep some color in it. But maybe it's more, instead of an orange, it's like a lighter brown like that. I think that might work better for my hierarchy and everything. So I can come in like that. I'm going to modify these buttons a little bit actually for the padding on them. And this is where if it was a component, I wouldn't have to select both of them, but it's okay. I'm just going to make those a little wider. I actually think that's looking pretty good. One thing I'm going to do, actually, I want to make sure, I'm just going to zoom to 100%. And this is an important thing to do, is make sure you're at 100%. If you're coming from somewhere like Photoshop where you're doing photo editing or other stuff, like you might not be thinking I should be at 100%, but it actually makes a lot more sense to work there because that's what most people, like if I build this into a website, this is how most people are going to see it. So I do think it makes sense. And one thing, I'm going to unlock my photo here because I want to move it over just a scooch, just so I can bring my text here over. And what I really don't want is like a small space, like all this white space here and then a small amount of white space here. It kills the balance of the page. So I really want to make sure that everything is nicely balanced. I'm looking at aligning here. So alignment is really important with things like if you're coming in and you're going to set things up and whoops, sorry. And then you come in and you say like, oh, this is going to be right here. Like, it's not very noticeable that the home and the text here aren't aligned, but it's off by just enough that maybe someone doesn't realize it, but it doesn't look right. There's something a little bit, like now that you're looking at that, doesn't it look a little bit off? So I definitely want to make sure I'm coming in. Same here, I don't want the white space to be too tight, so I'll move that over. And again, you don't want this. The one option is like if you're getting close, like go and it's underneath, and that's going to cause a problem because it's harder to read the text. But like that's your choice. You're either having something still underneath or you're giving it room to breathe. You're not doing something like this where it's going right up against it, just because it starts feeling crowded. It starts feeling like, why is that even happening? So, we have to be careful with that. And this actually could be an interesting thing when I code this up that I don't think I can do in Figma. But what I might try and do is use some shape outside or something like that to actually have the text like wrap a little bit, but the wrapping could be pretty wide. So this text even could come, it comes sort of into that space that the burger's making a little bit. It could be kind of interesting. Now, what I'm going to do is take this and build the mobile layout. And you might be saying, Kevin, if you follow my web stuff, you might be saying, don't you go mobile first? And yes, if I'm making a website, I always code it mobile first. But if I'm designing, I always start at the big screen. Why? I find it gives me more creativity, more room to do what I want, and then it's easier to simplify. Whereas with coding, it's easier to add complexity to something. You can add or strip it away pretty much just as easily with design software because you just move stuff around. Whereas with code, I find it easier to build up and add complexity instead of overwriting a whole bunch of things to strip away complexity. So I did have a suggestion from somebody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push A for my frame tool. And let's go into my phones and we'll just grab the 8. That should be fine. And I am going to build this to phone. And we're going to need this to be a bit taller. So I'm just going to stretch that out. And now we just need to move things in. So I'm going to grab my navigation, Option drag it over. But obviously, if I come into here in my main navigation, I don't need all of these guys right now. So I'm going to delete them for the moment. And we're going to come in with a little hamburger menu for my hamburger website in a second. Whoops, I just want my background. I don't need it sticking out, so we'll just shrink that down. Again, I'm going to click and Option drag to bring that over. And I want to line it up with my logo now. I'll push K and just shrink that down to make sure it actually fits on the page. I think we can keep that same style, right? If I zoom in, zoom to 100, there we go. You know, I think on a phone, something like that could look perfectly fine. We obviously want the burger to still be coming in. Now, one thing to be careful when you drop something in a frame in Figma, make sure your mouse cursor is in the frame. So just for example, if I Option drag this and I let go now, see how the whole thing pops off? So even though the burger is inside, like overlapping the frame, my mouse cursor was outside the frame, so it hangs out here. There you can see I can drag it back in, but sometimes I have trouble getting things back in frame. So if you need something really hanging out, just make sure like when you let go of your mouse, you might have to just make sure you grab it on the left and then bring it over to get it in there. I'm just gonna have it hanging off. I don't know if this is gonna work super well, but I want to keep the oversized burger. We might have to shrink it down. We'll see. But what we'll do is we'll grab my text and bring my text in, and that will shoot down the side a little bit. Maybe we, like here, I think it's going to be a little too tight, and I'm still really, really aware of my spacing. But I really think ideally this would wrap around that image a little bit more, but I don't think there's an easy way to, I've tried doing something. I can't change the shape of this to be a bit off or different. So I'll leave it like that for now. And then I'll grab these guys, Option drag them. And we could just set up something like that. Maybe they end up the same width as one another at this size. And even, I guess we don't have tons of content, so this could be shrunk down. I didn't need it to be longer after all. And then we can just come in here with my burger and I might, shrink that down a little bit. And have it something like that. I don't like my spacing that I have here. And this is where I should have made these kind of components. So if I did need to make a change, it's not terribly hard to do. And I am cheating a little bit now because I'm doing a one-off design. I'm really just making it work for this one situation. And it's not something that would, you can't really shrink down a button because it's not fitting in that one context. So I am definitely cheating because I'm living only in this context and nowhere else. Just so you know that if you're doing something like this for a portfolio and you just want this part of it, there's no reason not to do these cheating things. You can get away with it. Whereas if you're actually building out a full layout, it's a little bit trickier. You can't really do stuff like that. So I think for now, all I'm going to do is design my hamburger menu, and then I'll explain what the next steps are going to be in this project in a second. So we'll go with white, I guess. I didn't make a white color, did I? No, we should have one. So let's make a new color. We'll call it white. I know it's not white yet, but what I'll do is I'll edit it. So it's white. And then we will make it a little bit thicker. I'll go with a 3, maybe. I'll Option drag it up. And somebody on Twitter recommended, I sort of shared my first draft of this design. They called it, since it's a hamburger site, just for laughs, I guess, to make a hot dog menu by stretching these parts out. And I sort of find it looks like a hamburger anyway. So, we could go with something like that. Now it's way too long. So I'll just select all of them and shrink it down. And if ever you don't like the spacing on it, the easiest thing to do is just grab one of them, move it a little bit, select them all, and then just come and tidy up until you get the spacing that you like. At least that's how I've done it. And we can do something like that for our mobile. And so as an initial layout, as a first layout, this I think is what I'm going to stick with. I'm happy with how it looks. I think it looks all right. I hope you do too. And I hope you like just seeing a little bit of my design process. It wasn't too complicated here, but I shared obviously a few of my ideas. And so as a next step for this, what I'm going to do is stick in Figma, and I'm going to have a second video where we're going to explore how to how to show I'm going to have a second video. We're going to explore prototyping a little bit in Figma, because prototyping in Figma is really, really cool. You do a lot of really powerful things with it. So what we can do is we'll actually add in some hover effects for the buttons. We'll add in hover effects for the navigation menu, and we'll actually make the mobile navigation something that works, so that when I start coding it up, I have something to base everything off of. And maybe we can try and add some other animations or something in there as well at the same time. So if that sounds like something cool, something you'd like to see, and you haven't yet subscribed, do make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss out on that next video. And thank you very, very much for watching. Big thank you to my patrons for their support every single month. You guys are absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your code on the internet just a little bit more awesome.